Hello and happy Friday. Welcome to another Front Office Sports webinar. Sincerely hope you all are staying safe, happy, and healthy out there. I'm Joe Londigan of Front Office Sports and excited to chat with you all today about sponsorship and where that subsection of the sports industry goes from here. Obviously, been a tough few months on that side of things. Before we get going, a couple housekeeping things. As you enter the webinar here, feel free to introduce yourselves in the chat. And if you have any questions for our panelists as we go, feel free to drop those in the questions tab. We'll get to as many of those as we can throughout the course of the show, as well as towards the end of the show. And if you would prefer to have the chat notifications turned off, go ahead and click the little bell at the top so that there's a line through it and you won't hear the pinging in your headphones as we go. So without further ado, let's meet our panelists. First and foremost, from the other side of the Willamette River in Portland, Oregon, Mr. Nick Lawson of Squad. How you doing today, bud?
I'm good, man. I'm excited to be here with you both.
Awesome. Before we get going, do you want to tell a little bit about yourself and like what Squad is and what you guys do on the sponsorship side of things?
Yeah, definitely. So I'm Nick. I'm the co-founder of a company called Squad. We're helping sports teams and events connect fans to sponsors digitally through some of our digital activations, scratch and wins, trivia, just to make your sponsorship what used to be in stadium. Hopefully it's getting back there soon, but especially outside of stadium, more trackable, more digital, and a little bit more engaging for your fans and your sponsors.
Awesome. And the other half of the panel here, repping the East Coast, Mr. Anir Zanozi from Zoom. Really excited to have you here today too, bud.
Yeah, excited to be here. Myself, rookie dad, lucky husband. Zoom, we enable brands to monetize, measure effectiveness of partnerships, and then how to help boost revenues and increase ROI. We work with some of the best teams, leagues, agencies, and brands to help get this done.
Awesome. Rookie of the Year candidate already, from what I understand.
So you should see one Call of Duty.
Without further ado, then let's jump into some sponsorship talk. So for both of you guys, whoever wants to start, feel free to run with this. What are some of the challenges that the organizations that you partner with have presented to you on the sponsorship side of things over the last couple of months?
Yeah, from our end on activation, it's a total rethink of what sponsorship is. I mean, for so long we relied on live games, fans being in our stadiums. And now that's totally changed. On the flip side of things, the sponsor goal hasn't changed, right? Their goal is still to reach your fans, create awareness, drive leads. So I think the big thing is maybe not an issue, but what we have to do as an industry is just get really creative about recreating how we, take a fan from I'm interacting to I'm leading you to our sponsor's goal. And that's going to be totally different than how we used to do it. I think boothing, physical coupons, all of that needs to be kind of reworked. So, it's almost a scrap everything, go back to the drawing board, which, on my end, I think it's extremely fun to get creative like that and fun to engage our sponsors and create opportunities. But the biggest thing that I'm seeing is, the twofold of one, we have to change a lot of things, but then two, the information is trickling in slowly. We have a minor league hockey team that just learned all the restrictions that will happen in their stadium. And they're like, well, we didn't know that a month ago. So now we have to change everything we were planning on doing. So I think that's the biggest things that we're seeing with our organizations that we work with is, how do we ensure we're still reaching our sponsor's goal while being flexible enough to say, if the league or our building or our state changes how we can do this, how many different scenarios can we plan for to be able to make sure that, we're hitting what is going to be the ultimate goal for any sponsorship salesperson or activation person, which is you're helping your fans toward your sponsor's goal of, again, generating leads, building relationships, purchases of products.
Awesome.
Yeah, that's fun. We're seeing a lot of that as well, Nick. As far as first and foremost, there's the health concerns, and everyone's looking to make sure that it's amazing that these leagues and athletes and the massive amounts of people that are behind the scenes making all of this happen are finding a way throughout all these obstacles to get it done. And I always start every call with clients like, what are your biggest obstacles? And 2020 was like, hey, what's up? But it really comes down to like we need platforms like Squad, right? We need activations that are out there. Digital is the path forward, right? There's no question about that. That's the only way we're going to reach fans right now in a safe environment. We'll have fans back in the stands at some point, but right now the best avenue is that. But then once we get to that, what does it work for these partners on digital, right? How do we measure that in a way that's fair? How do we keep the partners that we already have? A lot of these partners have spent a lot of money and those assets are no longer on the table. So it doesn't make sense to go and try to charge them new things, but how do we make good on that? How do we offer those different ways? But I mean, there's going to be a lot of new partners that are at the table. Look at Manscaped, right? I mean, they're with the 49ers. They did an awesome campaign with Dignitas with one of their streamers on Twitch was shaving his legs under in 1 minute to get it done. So D2C brands are now at the table. So brands are looking at, teams and right holders are looking at, how do we get to D2C? How do we get to these other organizations? And then what are those different assets worth, like those logos now in the stadiums that are going to be on these tarps? While we might not be selling it because we're trying to retain the amazing partners and trying not to give back, or we might be selling it to local now with the NFL making that. So looking at that digital presence and those activations like Squad that are engaging these fans, what does that work on social? And it's not just like Owned is easy, right? Owned, you're just taking the API and you're able to look at that information. Earned is really the tough challenge. What is our audience worth? You don't have Ticketmaster to tell you who's coming through those gates anymore, right? So it's understanding who that digital audience is. How do you quantify what those target audiences are? And what is that worth to those brands as a property that you can provide? So, I mean, there's a lot of challenges, but I think there's no question. It's digital. Once we know it's digital, right? We know it's that. Then what is it worth? And who are we hitting and who's engaging with us?
Yeah.
Amir, you brought up an interesting point about kind of the financial situation for teams that this has created. So for both of you, how do you how do you recommend rather teams convince sponsors to continue to spend during a pandemic or the inevitable recession that this is going to create?
I'll let you start. Yeah, I'll let you start with that.
Sure. Yeah. So it's a buyer's market. If I was a brand, I would be going right at it because I'm sure our teams, like right now, we're properties and right holders, they're in a tough situation trying to move everything to digital. I mean, I can't tell you for how long the old guard was like, we're not going that way. It's a toss in, it's a throw in. And then all the organizations that have been investing in it, you're watching them just murdered right now in a really great way. So, looking at this, there's a number of things that we want to look at to measure, like, what they might consider like a good ROI is, right? And understanding what those digital assets are, you're going to want to look at CPVs, right? How many video views? You want to look at impressions, right? How many people are watching this? You want to look at those engagements. And then you want to handle this all differently. If it's text, if it's image, if it's video on demand, if it's live video, you're going to be looking at concurrent viewers. But all of those organizations that have been doing these digital sort of campaigns are, it's funny. We started looking at all the different teams and leagues. We started ranking them by engagement rate. And the teams that historically don't have a great performance on the field or on the court are now kind of doing better with the amount of engagement rate that they have because they haven't had to rely on the winning. They've had to look for different ways. Are they doing I saw this amazing Dunkin' Donut race contest with you pick a character on Squad. You guys did an awesome job with that with the board. But all these different ways of like engaging these fans during this time is super important. And then if you're able to quantify it, that's at the end of the day, the best thing that you can do. So to be honest, I don't remember the original question that we got onto, but it's looking at ways of these different organizations and running apps and running campaigns, and whether it's on the website or within the app itself, all of those are different ways that we can collect first-party data. And I think Squad does a great job of doing that as well.
Yeah, what's interesting when you talk to teams, a lot of them kind of say, "Hey, it's what I've been using, and sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't with my brands. Is a recession's never been a better time to spend on marketing." I mean, everybody knows that. I mean, the first year in B school, that's what they tell you whenever they bring up a recession, right? I think there's a misunderstanding of what's happening in the market. Brands aren't spending overall. It's not like they're cutting off spending. They're just not spending money with you. I mean, look at your Twitter feed. I mean, they're filled with sponsors who usually have invested massively with sports teams. They've just said, look, you don't have the product that I need. And I mean, to be honest, in sponsorship, we're a product-based business. We have signage, we have tweets, we have digital activations, we have ways to generate leads. And to be honest, our product isn't adequate for the current scenario. So I think, before you ask the question of, hey, how do we convince them to spend money? It's more so, let's ask the question of, well, look, and I looked at this the other day. Lowe's is dumping money into YouTube pre-roll ads right now, like dumping money. Like if you look at their YouTube pre-roll ads spend compared to NFL.com, it's like 7 times more, right? What that tells me is Lowe's wants YouTube ads. Like Lowe's wants to integrate with YouTube. So, if I want to go get Lowe's, I'm going to create YouTube content that's going to be able to reach a large amount of people and be able to create branded opportunities. So I think, the biggest thing that I always struggle with is, brands are spending money because, again, it's common knowledge. In a recession, the person that spends more gains more market share, and that obviously makes sense. If you're spending more than your competitor, you're going to increase market share. I think the misconception is they're just not spending with you. And how can you create ways that, when you get on the phone with a Lowe's, when you get on the phone with, another business, even a local business, to say, look, I know I know your company has been spending money on YouTube pre-rolls. We have over 50,000 subscribers. Did you know that? Great. Let's get some information, or let's have one of your salespeople on to talk about why Lowe's is so great as we do a virtual tour of the stadium, and how we've helped construct this piece of the grass or this piece of the wall, and that's where you'll see success. So I think, again, as we really look at convincing brands to spend dollars, unfortunately in the past, and much to Amir's point, like sports are exciting, sports are emotional, and we were able to sell on emotion, and that was almost our crutch. We had a worse product technically, but a great product emotionally. Nobody expected games to go away. Once games go away, all of a sudden it's like, well, our product's really bad. And to be honest, toward modern advertising, a lot of sponsorship products aren't trackable. They're not digital. They're not where attention is. Recall is terrible for signage. And now it's what I'm excited about the industry is that's going to force us to be better, right? It's going to force us to say, we can't ignore the fact that we should be doing a YouTube show before every game, or even a live show, because it's what brands want. And in the past, they purchased with us. Now they're not going to. So let's make this the time that we actually offer our customers exactly what they want, so that we can be mutual beneficial to not only the sponsor, but our team.
Nick, that's a really good point, because if you just slap a logo on a video, right, you're not winning anything. You look at Last Dance, right? So Nike, they saw loss. They just did their report. I saw on FOS, right, that they're seeing losses across the board, but because online didn't sell as much. But right now, I mean, they saw 50% growth for the Jordan brand. And look, not everyone's got a 10-year vault of the greatest marketable athlete of all time, but that storytelling is a digital asset, and your digital team is your strongest asset that you have right now. So if they're creating content on YouTube, I mean, I remember back in March, you guys published FOS. Eddie had an article on the New York Giants. They saw this increased surge of subscribers and viewers, and really that's a white space for teams, as we haven't seen a lot of investment in that. So if you can do great storytelling, if you can create content, and athletes right now, they've never been more influential. So if you can get them involved, a lot of them, depending on what sport you're in, want to also have that light and that stage for them to activate and engage on. I think there's a lot of different ways that you can look at old content during COVID, right? Production's going to be all out of whack, but can you do voiceovers and audio over old content and have people explain what it was like to go through those moments, just like what they did at the Last Dance? These compelling stories are really going to make that difference. And just, Nick Kelly had a great comment on Anheuser-Busch of like, well, now you're telling me that the stadium is not worth as much. Now we're all going to digital. And I think, he's kind of setting the bar low, right? He wants to get as much value as he can. And all these partners, like you said, Nick, not a lot of them are going to be spending more. You're just going to be trying to retain them as a partnership effort, right? And figure out ways to engage them. But it's clearly digital is the way, weaving in ways that make sense. Those Lowe's examples were like on point as far as that centers back to their brand. That amplifies what they care about. So at the end of the day, if we're not doing a good job with the partners that we have, there's new partners out there, right, that want this attention. When COVID goes away, and it will, right, there's new brands like Zoom, like Livestream, all these platforms that we're leveraging right now. They want to retain that amount of success and attention that they have. So as we go and expand, we brought up Manscaped earlier, right? That's D2C. D2C is a huge part. But if you're going to go after Clorox, right? I mean, everybody wants to partner with Clorox right now. But they've also, they're producing products, right? If they do too much demand, then, and they aren't able to supply that. So it takes a little bit of thought behind it. And there's a lot of different platforms that can help you understand how to best prospect those different organizations. But right on with what Nick said, and great question, Joe.
This was going to be my next question, but Hillary kind of beat us to the punch in the chat. And Nick, you mentioned the Lowe's example, but what are some of your favorite or best-in-class digital activations or campaigns that you've seen thus far during the pandemic that the sports industry should be using as a benchmark for success?
Yeah, I was really intrigued with Chicago Bulls. The way that they piggybacked off of The Last Dance. I mean, to be honest, the Bulls didn't have too much to do with that production, but they did an entire video series. I think it was called After the Dance, where they had some of those players come on and talk about the show and that stuff, right? And they linked it with the sponsor, right? So I think the biggest things, the smartest and most impressive have been, there's this thought that, hey, we're not putting on The Last Dance, so maybe we post a few, photos and we'll just sync up with that. What the Bulls kind of did was say, no, like, this is the most attention that, unfortunately, sorry to any Bulls fans, but they're not doing great, on the court. Let's put some attention back onto the glory years and piggyback off of this massive ESPN production and create some of those storylines. And I'm very excited for that, for the return of baseball with MLB. I'm excited to see which minor league teams are going to say, what, the Dodgers are playing today. I'm going to give you an inside take. Like, imagine if you were able to have your play-by-play audio person through a live stream call the Dodger game, right? And give the little anecdotes of, this is this player, they played on our team from this to this, he played on this minor league team and then was traded over to us. That's something where you can piggyback off of that sort of value that somebody else is bringing. So I think I was very impressed with that, because I didn't even think of that, right? It was kind of like, oh, of course, well, you're going to tweet a few images, but they really said, look, if you're garnering all this attention for me and for my brand, don't let me just stop there. Let me even take that a step further and integrate our sponsors onto it, because obviously, the Bulls that have the sponsors there aren't going to be the same sponsors that are on ESPN. And it's our job on our sports teams to be able to bring them back into the fold and be able to promote them. So that's one of the, there's been a ton, there's been a ton of, especially minor league teams that don't have games that have been really creative. To be honest, a lot of them have come from broadcast and being able to broadcast different viewpoints that fans aren't able to see, whether it's a Facebook Live show. I know the Oklahoma City Dodgers, who we work with, did like a Dodgers dialogue where they brought people in each week to talk about it on Facebook. But I think as we look at kind of the roles of teams, the more steps that you can create to become your own distribution channel and not rely on somebody else, that's what the Bulls did. The Bulls basically became a historical documentary distribution channel with that campaign. The Dodgers, Oklahoma City Dodgers, are becoming their own distribution channel for some of these, products. I think that's what's very intriguing to me in the future of, if you can build a Facebook audience that will come in each week and watch your shows just like they watch ESPN, that's massively, massively valuable. And then again, don't be afraid to piggyback off of the attention that somebody else is getting, that you can pull that back in.
That's a great example. There's so many teams doing a lot of different ways to engage. I mean, I think that is one of the best ways of leveraging a moment in time and taking that real-time moment and creating some campaigns from that, for sure. Sports and esports, they hate to compare themselves, but like, I think esports is crushing it right now, right? Like they are pandemic proof as you can get. They might not be having the real, in-person kind of tournaments at the moment, but they're still doing tons of activations with partners live on Twitch where the entire stream is devoted to that one partner. You're seeing, Warzone tournaments with Chipotle and 100 Thieves. What they're doing over there is amazing. They're constantly, putting content out there. Team Liquid's doing some real cool stuff. Dignitas is doing some real cool stuff. Look at other platforms, like what esports is doing, and leverage that style and strategy and apply it through your branding. The Arizona Coyotes, I feel like, is doing a really great job. If you want to push me on traditional sports, I think they've done a great job pulling their old logo back, showing that jersey. It's tough. Greenfly, they're a great publishing app. They posted like 100 different ways teams can leverage content, during the time where there's no, play at the moment. So recommend checking out that. I thought there's a lot of great strategy there.
Bring up the Coyotes example. When in doubt, 90s nostalgia. That's what I always say. Amir, from an evaluation standpoint, particularly on the digital side, like we've been talking about, what have organizations been paying attention to, and like how does that differ from what they should be paying attention to, in your opinion, to measure like the success of this stuff?
Yeah, so I might not make some friends out of this, but I'll just keep it honest because we got to be tough on ourselves to improve. A lot of teams just want to see data that shows them in a good limelight, right? And that's not going to help anyone, right? Everyone's competitive. Everyone wants to be number one. I get it. But sometimes it's great to know that you're not number one so that you can understand what you have to do to get there. So ways that we do benchmarking analysis, and just engagement rates is a really great way for comparisons as far as just the amount of engagement that they're generating across, benchmarking across themselves. I think a lot of them are focused just on own, and again, just that's because it's easier, right? To say this is how we're performing. And teams that historically have done well over time, that's how they always look good. But if you're looking at the fan engagement and you're looking at the audience, and the audience has a lot of value that they generate on behalf of you, a lot of people are just leaving money on the table there by not looking at their audience. So, and when you look at MLS fans, right, they're so passionate about what they're doing. They've got these fan groups that share and push this content in different ways. So one, LAFC has done a phenomenal job. Ryan Bishar and Mike Manella, definitely recommend talking to them in the industry. They're on the BI side, but they're capturing everything, right? They're looking at the fans, they're looking at the values, the assets, everything. But they've done a really good job of understanding that there is an impact and value to that audience engagement. How do you quantify that? So I think like really where the tough parts are is just understanding one is the value that it is, and then what value do you bring to these partners, and then are you hitting their target audiences? Because it's easy. I mean, you've got multiple properties in the same city, but if you can justify that you have more quality over that quantity of the other property, and every property has a different fan base, right? You look at Miami Heat, who has such a diverse fan base versus other organizations that might be in smaller markets. Everyone's got value. You just have to understand what the value is of the entertainment that you're providing and the audience that you have, and then use that as a way to compare against it. But I think it's easy to, lean on the metrics that make you look good, but I think it's understanding what your audience drives is the most important thing that we can look at. And the last thing I'll just kind of like note onto that too is just data privacy. A lot of times, that takes the back seat because people are just rushing to get leads over, they're rushing to get first-party data over to their partners, and just making sure that's a primary concern, like CCPA, GDPR. Sometimes it's like a conversation that we have that's new to people, which it absolutely should not be. You don't know what those things are. Take some time, understand it, understand the value of privacy and data, because that is becoming more and more of a thing. Be ahead of it instead of behind it.
And Amir, what I love about your product, and I'm gonna give you some shout out love here, is how much you can segment that data. I mean, when you talk to a brand, like, hey, we get 600,000 fans through our stadium. Let's compare that to Facebook. Facebook can literally tell you, we're gonna get you in front of 600,000 beer lovers, right? And maybe you're not gonna be in the 600,000 range, but you can go to a beer partner and say, look, most of our fans have an affinity toward particularly your brand or just beer in general. That's such a powerful tool in any type of advertising because, again, their goal is to reach their customer. And I think you're totally spot on there. The data today in sponsorship is the most powerful tool you have because in all of, advertising, it is the entire game. 100% very much make sure your privacy policy is in place. You're really securely housing that data. You're not just handing it out. But, the number one thing you can do for your sponsorship organization is understand who your fans are, what they like. And then to be honest, like, I think to your point, like totally be fine if you're not great in car dealerships, and you don't have to have a car dealership sponsor. If you're not great at reaching that customer, double down and talk about, the customer who you are very good at reaching. And that's, in my mind, that's sponsorship 2.0. Understanding where you're very good, understanding where you're not good. And I know, time has always told us, well, you should have a car dealer partnership, right? There's no point in signing up a car dealership partner if you cannot get their customers to buy and purchase cars. And again, that's what I love about your product is just the ability to segment that data, go to a sponsor and say, look, you've never sponsored our team. I'm going to tell you why you absolutely should. And from what I've seen, 9 times out of 10, they'll literally be like, wow, I didn't even know that. Awesome, let's sign a deal today, type of thing.
My 2-year-old in the background, I don't know if you heard him. He agreed with you 100%.
He's agreeing in.
You might see Hudson from there. But no, and I appreciate that. And, and that's, all this information with data warehousing and a lot of what these teams are doing, it's critical. It's so important. That first party data, there's some organizations that want to mail, get in front of and even sometimes the old school way still works, right? When people zig, you got to zag. And that's the story of every sort of marketing campaign that's out there. So the way for them to make it is, one, do these digital activations where they can collect this information in a privacy conscious way, where they understand who they're talking to, because they're not coming in the stadiums. Your digital presence is so much larger than the amount of seats that you have in your stadium, and you've got to do these different activations to pull that data in. But then also, like you said, you got to understand the audience behind it, and then leverage the audience and the analytics that you have to prospect. It's backwards approach, right? Go look at the brands that your fans are already passionate about. That's not science, right? It's just logical. Go backwards, understand what they care about, and it's a win-win-win. If you can position that to get a cause that's important to your fan base and that's important to your organization, right now more than ever, I see the shirt that you're wearing, Nick. These causes are incredibly important. And I'm seeing Washington Spirit, and I want to highlight women's sports. They've got some of the most loyal fan bases out there, and they just signed CVS Health. They're going to organizations I haven't historically seen do a lot of promotion, but they're able to justify based off where they are and their audience and who they're hitting. And then the last point I'll say is, with these causes and these shifts and these announcements that people are making, people should be tracking the new people that are entering the conversation. You're seeing sports like NASCAR have new audiences approach it for the very first time. They were tweeting FAQs, hey, ask us what do you like? What's new? What questions do you have? And they're seeing, because of everything that's going on, that they're having all these new people enter the conversation. All of that needs to be quantified. And historically, some of these organizations have not been doing that, who've been riding on the success of their name, which I would too, don't get me wrong. If I had that leverage, I would use it all day long. But at the end of the day, what Nick said is spot on. It's a data game, and you've got to understand who that is, and you've got to understand that impact that you make, the conversions that you make on behalf of your partner, on behalf of your organizations. Gates, the merch and Gates is gone right now, right? Hopefully you're using Instagram to put your, run ads, promote the content of your merch while the games are coming up, whether you're later in July or back in October, or you got the championship series, the challenge series coming up this weekend. But it's all about digital activations right now, and the leagues have got to work with their organizations and the clubs to ease up some of the rules. Twitch is like a prime real estate right now to be in front of. Look at all the data that's increasing on that. If you can, and one thing we were talking about before the show is it's different. So many different teams and leagues. There's all these different rules, and whether there's BAM or you're in college or all the different organizations that are involved. each have different rules. So like take this information and use it appropriately to what you can do. Not everything is going to fit what your scenario is, but yeah, at the end of the day, it's digital, and then you got to be able to track it. It's as simple as that.
That's a good transition into a question that Corey raised in the chat. What are some strategies that brands can use, or teams, to embrace some of those emerging platforms like you just mentioned, Twitch, TikTok, et cetera, with everything happening right now?
I think, from what I've seen, especially on TikTok, the number one thing is people are like, we want to get into TikTok. And my first question is, well, have you created a TikTok account for yourself? I don't care if you're 50, 60, whatever. And their answer is no. Right. And some of the worst things I've seen, and this goes for Snapchat too, it's crazy how much Snapchat is not utilized as a mature social platform. Is there's a misunderstanding of it because you haven't been on there and understand why people are obsessed with it, right? Like I've seen some sports teams get onto TikTok, literally post videos that are not only made, horizontally for Twitter, so you can't even see the thing, but don't fit into what TikTok's all about. And then they're like, well, TikTok didn't work for us. Well, it's a misunderstanding of the platform, right? Like, to be honest, TikTok is a very, I don't want to call it meme based, but it's dancing. It's quick videos. It's almost like a Vine type of thing. You need to massively consume what's working on TikTok in order to reach your goal. The number one thing I saw on TikTok, and this was outside of sports, was there was a pediatrician. And on TikTok they have these things where you point and then the word comes up and all of that. That was a trending thing. What she did is she used that as a platform to basically educate people about what flu-like symptoms really, when is it not dangerous? This. When is it dangerous? This, right? And her goal is to educate mainly kids, but also parents on, here's when you should come see me as a doctor, and here's when you shouldn't come see me as a doctor, right? And, went viral outside of TikTok. And that's the thing where I see with these emerging platforms, don't just say, hey, we need to be on TikTok. Let's just post some videos, right? And then have it not work. And then, again, this is my beef with a lot of organizations with Snapchat. They try Snapchat for 2 days. They say it doesn't work, and then they stop. There's a massive amount of money being made on Snapchat right now. And same thing with TikTok. There's a massive amount of engagement being found on TikTok. And there's been a massive amount of value being brought on Twitch. I saw a dude in pandemic. He was sitting there on his accordion, and literally he was taking donations for his rent. That guy had 100,000 views, and he hit his rent within 20 minutes of playing the accordion with a beach background. And my thing is just like, if that dude can generate value and revenue from Twitch, he has an understanding of what Twitch is and what people are going to tune into. Take some time to educate by actually getting on the platform. You don't have to like what's on it. I think some of the content on TikTok is extremely dumb. And that's because I'm a 30-year-old guy and I don't get that stuff, right? I'm not a 14, 15, 20-year-old kid. But I think with those emerging platforms, the number one way you can become an expert on it is just get on there and consume. And don't do a ton of consume first and then start doing some tests on that. The Winterhawks here in Portland, they got on TikTok fairly early. They saw a video where people were kind of doing this weaving thing. They got their players to do the weaving thing. They got more views in that TikTok video than they had in 5 years on any video on Twitter in 24 hours. They hit 1 million in a week. They hit 1 million views. And that's just to where they understood the platform, they understood the content, and now TikTok is a major platform for them. So I think it doesn't really matter what platform it is, but like get on there, be a practitioner. Don't just say, hey, we should be on Twitch. Let's just stream some guy playing a video game. That's not going to work. Nobody's going to tune into that. But really take the time to really understand it, consume it, digest it a little bit, and then start strategizing on how do we get our message, our sports games, our sports teams. And I think NFL teams have done this great on TikTok. How do we get our message to fit into that platform as opposed to have that platform fit into our message.
That's a really good point, Nick. And at the end of the day, it's one, you need to be where your audience is, right? If they're there, then you need to be there. It's as simple as that. And then secondly, it's so like TikTok doesn't have an official API, right? Some of these platforms are so new, they don't have an official API. But the platforms that do have APIs, you need to know how they work. You can't score in a game where you don't know how to score points. You can't win a game if you don't know how to score the points, right? So if you're looking at how much, if you're asking fans to share stuff on their Instagram story, well, you can't get Instagram story data of unauthenticated users. So you got to think about that when you launch these campaigns. Like there's rules to all of this, right? And I don't make the rules. You got to go to Zuck, right? So all of these different platforms have different rules that you need to understand how they work, and it's not that hard. And if you have a hard time, come talk to me. I'm happy to help you. But it's all out there. They're there. And then all of these platforms, there's like Sports Summit 20. They're spending a lot of time educating the practitioners on how to leverage them. If you want to look at great TikTok, I mean, NFL does a great job. NASCAR does a great job. Look at how they're masterfully understanding the trends. You go to TikTok to be engaged by the trends that are happening, and then everyone does their like remake of it. If you're copying what other people do, like exactly, you'll never make it. The internet works by doing your own thing, but understanding what the trends are and your thing on that trend. Exactly what Nick was saying. So all of this, you got one, understand where understand what your audience is. Two, understand who the big players are and what they're doing well. So then you can understand what your version of it. And then the last point is just know the APIs, know how these metrics work. And by knowing that, you can align it to your partnerships and opportunities. And we kind of covered it. You don't want to slap a logo on there. You want that story to be engaging. When she's pointing at those different things, like Nick was explaining the story, people were able to understand what was happening. Just putting your mascot on TikTok is not going to deliver those results. And then just how people are talking to the Washington Redskins, they've really changed how they tweet and engage with their audiences, their voice, right? And they've done a really effective job by talking to you as a peer. And so it's just like understanding how other people are leveraging is great, but always be experimenting, always be failing. I mean, that's the only way. Comfort is the enemy of greatness. You're comfortable with what you're doing, somebody's going to come out of nowhere and pass.
And I think, just a lot of people also ask me, like, how does TikTok help my sponsorship? And obviously TikTok just came out with their ads platform, which was like, okay, well now brands can just like target NFL fans. And this is the biggest thing about any digital platform. Like, to be honest, they don't need you. They can just target your fans on TikTok. How can you create that story like you're talking about, Amir, to where they can't recreate that? I'll give a little bit away from the Winterhawks, and Rich came up with this, and we didn't execute it just because of the pandemic shutdown, but we were going to take Jack in the Box burgers, put it on the ice, and have the players try to score goals with them as a TikTok video. That's getting Jack in the Box out there. That's getting their products out there. It's a fun, engaging video. And Jack in the Box, will massively pay for that, for the attention it's getting with young people. Now, if Jack in the Box is like, well, do I want to spend, X amount of dollars on this campaign that the Winterhawks have put together, or do I want to spend X amount of dollars, create my own campaign, hope that it reaches hockey and Winterhawks fans within Portland? They're going to go, if you have the right tools and the right, ingredients, they're going to go with your recipe over than creating their own. So I think, the other part of this is like, why should I be on TikTok? Well, obviously that's where the attention is, but that's also where the dollars are going to funnel to. And if you're not there, you're literally going to miss out on those dollars. And if you get there almost too late, you're not going to be able to get there in time to really, really take advantage. If you're the first team that can monetize your TikTok, you have a massive head start on anyone else. And I don't care if, the Winterhawks got 1 million views in like a week on TikTok just by posting something that was very valuable there and can now bring sponsors on board. Again, it's don't be afraid to take that risk, but then when you start thinking of engaging ways to get your partners on board. And that's why you get onto TikTok, not because it's the hot new thing. You're getting on TikTok first to engage, and then to authentically introduce your partners to your fans through some of that content.
I just want to add one more thing to that, because you mentioned Jack in the Box, and there's a wonderful case study. I'm blanking on the name of the people at Jack in the Box. We don't work with them. This is completely separate. But they did an audience analysis of, they do work with Dallas Fuel, which is an esports organization. And so they did this campaign. It flopped. It was terrible. And they went and did audience analysis, and they came back and realized that gamers are really sarcastic, and they know about sponsorships, and they applaud it, right, and all these different things. And so they had a cartoon animation series on YouTube. Go watch it, not now because you're watching that, of course. But at some point, go watch it, or I'll tweet it out later. But basically, it's hilarious, right? They know, like they admit it. They're honest about it, and that works for YouTube. That works for gamers. It's not going to work for this different all these different campaigns. But you know, do your research. And then the last thing, I know I said this was the last thing. I got one word. The people that are publishing the content and pushing the content out, you listen to that story behind the NFL social media team and how they were able to change and shift this entire ship, right? By bringing in people with diversity, hiring more women in sports, hiring more people with minorities, right? You're bringing in all these different voices that can help understand what people are looking for. So I think it's not just what can I do to monetize this platform and engage and interact with it, but two, how can I have the right people on my team to understand the message, to effectively connect with these people on these platforms? So it's a little bit of like building a better ship and having better sailors, or you know. So but right on. I mean, it's all about knowing the platform and having people that can understand it.
My biggest takeaway is that if I had learned to play the accordion, my student loans would be paid off by now. No, just kidding.
They might be.
I'd watch.
Appreciate the insight, guys. So before we get into audience questions for this last little bit of the show, one thing I wanted to ask you guys, as we create more virtual touch points for sponsors and fans, how do you maintain the value for real world opportunities that hopefully will present themselves once things start to clear up?
Yeah, I mean, it's real world opportunities are interesting. Let's take sponsor boothing, for example. I mean, that thing is pretty much gone until we get a vaccine or we get people comfortable with shaking hands. And, you know, to be honest, the reason why they booth is they want that one-to-one connection. They want leads. They want to create leads for their organization. You can create that digitally and then adapt that for in-stadium digitally. So, you know, for example, what we're working at Squad right now on is most of those booths have a spinning wheel for a prize. Obviously, you can't do that anymore. Until fans are back in the stadium, we'll have a virtual spinning wheel, and they can still engage with that. So there's your leads part for a prize. And then the second thing is how do you get somebody to engage one-on-one with that person? And, you know, I've said this before on some of our LinkedIn Live stuff, but I want to see a team take an insurance agent who usually booths on that and do a pregame show where they give their analysis of, you know, how they think the game's going to go. There's no way to create that one-to-one familiarity with somebody than if they're talking football or baseball. And you're like, you know what? That guy knows what he's talking about. I should probably buy my insurance from that person, right? Because I've created that one-to-one connection. So I think one-to-one connections will totally change, whether it's good or bad. Obviously will depend on, let's talk era of people, how many people are comfortable with, you know, doing a one-to-one connection without touch. But I think what it really comes back down to, again, particularly with boothing, is there's two reasons why people booth. They want to do a one-to-one connection with the fans walking in your concourse, and they want to generate leads. Can you remake that process digitally so that they're still getting a one-to-one and generating a lead? And then when you get back into the stadium, assuming that the booth is going to have a plexiglass, as we're seeing with most restaurants, how do you then digitally create that as well? How do you make it so you can talk through the plexiglass, but then they scan the QR code and then they play the spinning wheel to see if they won, which the prize is sent via email. So I think that's the big thing there is people think, oh, well, you know, we'll never get that one-to-one connection back. It's just a different digital connection. And to be honest, for some of the new, you know, to be honest, for me, like going to a car dealership and going onto a car lot and talking with somebody on that is not something that I'm extremely interested in. So what I did, granted Toyota is the Winterhawks partner, what I did was I emailed the dude who I knew was the dealership guy, kind of told him what I wanted, built that relationship kind of via email. And then I went on the lot. He showed me the car that I wanted. I got in it. I checked it out and I was like, cool, let's get the paperwork going. That's no less of a one-to-one connection, for me at least, than me going to the dealership and him asking, how's your family? What do you do? What do you do that? So I think that's the big thing there, is understanding the end goal. The end goal is really to say, what are their goals? How do I replace that? And then how do I adapt that for my stadium? And that will give you a better answer than saying, oh my gosh, we have to totally do something massively different and then come back to a one-to-one connection that may be physical or close in distance. Then it's better to kind of think goals and replicating it through digital, rather than saying, let's just do this in the meantime and then wait till everybody gets back in the stadium and then put a booth up.
I really like one thing that you mentioned there with the QR codes. I know people are like, QR codes, it's like the Macarena of the internet. But I mean, there's so much data that you can grab. I mean, look at Amazon, right? Amazon is everyone knows Amazon, but there's stores, right? Go to one of their stores. They don't have price menus up there. They've got little QR codes that you can scan. You know what they're doing? They're understanding, oh, look, Joe actually likes this book. Joe likes this ukulele or accordion. I forget how we're paying off your loans, Joe. But as soon as they're scanning it, they're saving this information. Like, build your system in a way that digital is the main avenue, right? We'll go back into person, but like in person and one-to-one. But even then, like everything that's been happening with COVID, and we've heard this from so many other people, this was all stuff that was happening, right? This just made it all faster. Those that were ready for digital are crushing it. And those that are not are trying to catch up, and there's time. It's not a big deal. So evaluating what's in person, like for me, I'm looking at it like, okay, I want to create an AI that can capture that certain asset, right? Train the data to do that. If there's a logo on it, maybe it's trained. We already have that in our library. Capture that, understand the value of people sharing that content. Like, that's what I think about. If there's a Bud Light logo, it's got to be next to a bar, right? You want to capture that transaction. So there's something, everything is about that brand recall, or what is it motivating someone to do at that moment and triggering it. And there's ways you can test this afterwards. Like social media, there's so much data that you can consume and understand who these people are, what they care about. But then you can also do surveying. Waco Research does a really good job at like understanding the impact of branding afterwards. So like understanding, did they even see that? Like, because a lot of times, like, I don't see ads when I'm surfing or I'm like browsing. I don't really browse like this, but but like I don't see them anymore, right? So it's like, did I actually see that? So it's like, that's why content is the most effective way that I think moving forward, is like weaving it into a story where it makes sense and connects with someone on an emotional level. But all of this, is capturable. I care more about that. Like people say Black Mirror, and I'm like, that's awesome, right? I watch those episodes, I'm like, that is so cool. I can't wait to, you're mentioning Snapchat, like they're doing AR and physical location. That's what gets me excited. What is it worth, right? What was it worth for Jordan to do that during the NBA All-Star Weekend, and like evaluating the digital and seeing people share it? Look at those numbers. So for me, we'll go back to physical, we'll go back to one-on-one, we'll get past this at some point. There's a lot of scenario planning that you got to map out, but I just care about what does physical look through digital, and I think that's where the whole entire world is going to be looking through. When Apple comes out with AR glasses and what Snap's doing, I mean, that's the future. There's a reason why LiDAR is on your iPad and the new iPhones that will be coming out. They're digitalizing everything, right? So for me, it's just understanding the value on digital, and everything in person is just another way to stand out, but we're all going digital.
This question comes to us from Katie in the chat, and I'm curious to get your guys' perspective as tech people. How do you think teams will start to use artificial intelligence, and what do you think are the best ways for sponsors to engage with it?
I'll let you start with that, Amir. I know.
Yeah,
you got some background on it.
Thank you for that. Yeah, thanks for the alley-oop, Katie. So we leverage AI to detect logos on content, so you don't have to mention them. Social teams, they feel like they're selling out if they're mentioning the partner on the post, right? So we can capture all the logos. You want to look at exposure time, you want to look at clarity, you want to look at all these different factors of brand recall while they're consuming content. Where are the logos? How many logos? When did it come up? Is it a live stream? How many concurrent viewers were at that time? All that AI can assist with by detecting all of this, remove human element. I mean, there's a time where people were like interns with stopwatches, like, calculating how many times their exposures or what kind of what logos are out there in the outfield and stuff like that. All that AI can solve. AI can also tell you who these people are just based off their first and last name on social media, right? You can project a lot of this information and calculate this data. The whole goal is, and I say this in a way, like amplifying the human capital that you already have. Sports teams don't have a lot of people on the staff. At the end of the day, the front office is not getting the millions that some of these athletes are, right? It is what it is. So you need AI because it's near human intelligence, right? To amplify what you're doing, to expand what you're doing in a way to calculate and grab all this information in ways. AI is, it's leveraged in multiple ways, from sentiment to capturing these logos to understanding the value. But it's going to be everywhere at some point, and we leverage the hell out of it and train the hell out of it so that we can calculate those values for our partners. But I don't see how you can do this with just humans moving forward. It's just too much. There's too much noise. There's too many things that you're scrolling through on your feed to stop and understand and see these things. So, I don't know. I don't have anything more to say than that. But yeah.
And I'll stay with the expert there. I mean, the thing I know about AI is it saves me time. So that's what excites me about it. But no, I mean, it's going to be that thing in the background that basically all those interns who are manually doing all of that input, not to mention it also learns as you're kind of doing it. I think it will be a massive part of how we grow and get smarter about the data the massive data sets that we are collecting to make better decisions. So it will be a huge part of your sponsorship life, whether you know it or not, because you might just be getting the report that says, here's where you should be focusing on. But I'm excited about it because it's going to save us a ton of time as we get going on that.
And just one thing, and I know we're coming up at the end of the hour, and thank you everyone for joining, of course. One thing that Nick, you've shared a lot about this, that sports teams are like influencers, right? You look at like a David Dobrik, you look at like people that are sharing what he's done with SeatGeek, and like he's created as a character within the show. They only like Ian is like a former Watchroom guy, helping them at SeatGeek, do this and thing. They're crushing it, right? It's a character. Every time he does something with a sponsor, people get excited because he's giving something away. He's making a great moment out of it. Like this, that doesn't take AI to see that, right? Teams are influencers. People trust you. People get tattoos of teams. It's stronger than religions, their affinity. There's some good SRSS data around all of that, right? So how do we start leveraging like influencers, the collaborations, the deals? I mean, we've done these like emoji wars and stuff like that on Twitter. Like, it's got to be more than that, right? It's got to be these teams working together. A lot of teams are starting to do that with the same city, right? But there's that is the way forward. Look at what people are already doing and killing it. I'm looking at Twitch streamers. They're 24/7, not literally 24/7, but they're always streaming. They're always streaming this content. Like some of these teams, like you got to think outside of the box. Like, put your digital team out there and train people on how to use Photoshop, how to edit videos and photos. These are all these ways. Like, bring Adobe in as a partner. There's all these ways to leverage this stuff. And you need, at the end of the day, what Nick said was best, you need the data behind it. And if you can quantify that, bring a partner in and create content around it, it's an open and shut case. So do the activations, collect their data, measure it, analyze it, and make more partners, and make those partners happy, convert for them. Simple. Not so simple, but simple.
In theory. We're going to see if we can get a few more in the last 7 minutes or so here. Daniel asks, with the NFL allowing sports betting sponsorships, what are your thoughts on the Denver Broncos signing with 2 sports books and this new category of sponsorships, and what are considerations that teams need to make?
I mean, I think it's smart. And the key thing here is, if you talk to any gaming partner, casino, sportsbook, FanDuel, DraftKings, like, to be honest, they want the data. They want your leads. They want your fans who love sports. And when they say, the Denver Broncos are telling you to go bet with this company, and by the way, you can win a signed Denver Broncos helmet. You can't win anywhere else. That's what they're looking for. It's one of those things where it's like it's a no-brainer. I think a lot of teams may be hesitant. Maybe the league has some rules for why they're hesitant. It matters a lot. Like when we talk about gaming partners, it matters a ton on state law. I mean, let's take Washington State, for example. They have some of the strictest gambling. Like you can't play daily fantasy in the state of Washington. Like people drive down from Seattle to Portland to place their daily fantasy bets at the border and then drive back, right? So I think the big thing is all going to come down to kind of your state law regulations around your league, but it's the smartest thing ever, and it comes down to localization. I mean, if that betting company can tell a better story locally to you as a Denver Broncos fan with its messaging for why you should make this bet or place this bet, then you're getting nationally, I all of a sudden have an attachment with you, right? So I think as you look for these deals, data is going to be important to understand your fans and how many of them are actually sports bettors, how many of them are free to play and will engage with your contests that may be sweepstakes. How many of them are, gamers, because there's going to be a correlation there because they like to play games and win. So take that data, but then, I would sign a betting deal individually as a team sooner rather than later because one, the value you can give to them is going to be very lucrative. The cost per lead there is they're going to pay you a lot of money, but two, it's better than the NFL as a league telling you, I'm a Raiders fan, grew up in Oakland. If the NFL tells me to go to Caesar's Palace to place my bets, as opposed to the Raiders, I'm listening to the Raiders, maybe I'm listening to NFL. So I think that's the key thing there is get that, and that goes with minor league teams too. I mean, if you can, get that localization and tell that story of saying, look, we have X amount of fans within this area and we're able to reach them. Even if it's a smaller portion of what you're used to spending, I'm going to be valuable to you because I'm going to be telling a story for why you should make bets on these games. I mean, I know the Winterhawks through the lottery partnership who just came out with a sports book do the thing of saying X Winterhawks alumni is playing in the NHL game tomorrow night. Make sure you're placing your bets. And that's a crazy localized story that only the Winterhawks can get that broad range within Portland to be able to reach hockey sports bettors because they are the only hockey team really within the Northwest until Seattle gets their team going. So I think that's going to be the key thing there is it's just localization, telling that story. But, I wouldn't wait on it. I would get those betting partners as soon as possible if legalization is fine within your state.
Yeah, I think Nick brings up a great point. You've got to know what the laws and the rules are. U.S. Integrity does a really good job at that. They sort of are watch on and help organizations like make sure that they're within the rights of what they're doing. But I look at it as this is going to be a very terrible overlap. But you want to take that audience for the local different casinos as long as it's legal in your state, and you want to put that circle there. You want to take your audience and put another circle. And then in that group, in that middle, with my terrible Venn diagram, you want to look at that audience and figure out what are they into, what do they want, where are they already interested in betting, and then leverage that data to find the right partners. But activations like the scratch offs and stuff like that you can do through Squad are great indicators and ways to activate on those audiences because it's just so in line with the story of like what you're actually doing and what you're pushing. So I mean, it's there's a lot of ways of doing it. Just make sure you do it right, and that's the most important thing with any of these new sort of growing. And all of these, there's going to be a lot of new partners coming out of this. You've got to be open, and you've got to know and understand how you do this effectively with the rules and laws and regulations that you have.
Last audience question before we start wrapping up here. This comes to us from Ayla in the chat, who's looking at this from the perspective of somebody who works in minor league baseball. What's the best approach to activating a lot of these ideas that you guys have mentioned throughout the last hour here with a limited staff, with no players right now? And she adds, all these ideas are great for in season, but any more context as to what teams can be doing right now?
Yeah, I get asked this question a lot. I mean, it's like the example I use, which is probably a terrible example, is if Kim Kardashian had her show canceled right now, would she go broke? And the answer is unequivocally no, because she's built up the assets. She has a video game. She has, different Snapchat, I don't know if she's on TikTok, but, these different sort of channels in which she can reach it outside of what is her game day, which is her bread and butter. I think a couple things. One, this is all you need. I create a lot of content on LinkedIn, and this is what I use, and this is what I use. And I think you don't have to have this masterfully done, video series. Just use the equipment you have somebody go out. Honestly, get a ticket sales rep, get yourself on a phone who's a ticket sales rep who's decently good at batting. And then literally every day, going back to the Jack in the Box example, basically say, how far does a jumbo jack go? Have somebody underhand pitch it to them, hit that, and people will come in, people will converge on that, right? Having a tournament between staff. There's things outside of the game that you can really create. And I think people overvalue production value when this is all you need. To be honest, your computer camera, if you're trying to live stream, we use a program called StreamYard for our LinkedIn Live. You can customize it. You can make it look really professional, costs $30 a month. All you have to do is just be able to record that. So I think what the biggest thing you can do right now is build up those assets for the off season. So at when we do get games back, you have it, but don't assume that you can't create content around those pieces outside of your season. Sports fans will consume every second. Competitive tag is being bet on right now. The marble races got big, right? If those things can get big on social media, there's absolutely things you can do without your players being there and without a huge amount of equipment that you can chat about, right? The Biloxi Chuckers do a great job. They post it on LinkedIn and all their social channels, but they have a Facebook Live, they have a Rewind, they have, all of these different activations that they're doing in the off season that have nothing to do with their live game. So I think it's a mixture of thinking of new things, going back to your past and cutting up what are the best home runs that we have videoed in history, and then having fans be able to vote on that. And then, playing a new clip every day. You can easily do that with a limited staff in today's day and age. And it'll only build more assets for when you do get content back. Now it's just scheduled so you can create these activations and keep going. So I think the first step is not being overly concerned on the production value. And then, from there, just getting a little bit creative, seeing what works. Some content you post is going to be A+. Some content's going to absolutely flop. When it flops, try it one more time. If it flops again, cut it. Nobody's going to remember 2 weeks from now that you did this terrible campaign and it flopped and nobody liked it and you moved on to the next one. So I think that's the key thing there is just, use your smartphone, get a little bit creative, and create some of those off-season things so that when season does come back, you almost have a stockpile of activations that you can integrate with your sponsors.
Yeah, that was right on. You're just going to create digital campaigns. Don't be afraid to experiment. See what others are doing that's really well. Happy birthday messages, stuff like that. Those are all standard. But tons of people are doing user-generated contests. Even just contests within a race or hitting a ball or any of these. It's consistency. It's creating things. Even get on Twitch with an accordion if you need to. But it's at the end of the day, it's you got to experiment. But you just got to know what your audience is into and leverage that. So look at their audience, see what content is done well, and then create more content around it. Where those overlaps are with other people are more than just fans of your team, right? That is just one little thing that they care about. What are all the other things that they care about? If you don't know, then you need to find that out. And when you find those things out, then you'll see those intersections that make sense. Oh, we have an athlete that is into this. We'll bring him to do that or her to do this. And you just got to know who your audience is. And once you have that, these things will kind of present themselves. But happy to talk with you, Isla, if you're struggling to kind of find that.
Awesome. Well, guys, can't thank you enough for the insight today and for the time. And for everybody that joined us, thank you. Thank you so much. If you're curious about when we're going to do more of these, highly encourage you to subscribe to the FOS newsletter, follow us on Twitter as well, and connect with these guys on LinkedIn and Twitter as well. I believe I dropped their handles in the chat at some point if you want to go back and find that. And if you want to go back and watch this again, a link will be emailed to you, and there will be a VOD on Front Office Sports sometime next week. And if you're watching this VOD in the future, hello from the past. When are we allowed to go back to the bars? So from that standpoint, again, can't thank you enough. We'll talk to you very soon. Stay safe, stay happy, stay healthy. Bye.
Thanks, everybody.
Thank you.